I think from my perspective, the easiest way to get into an IT field is to start with a help desk position and work your way up. So it's answering calls, oh, I can't log into my PC, what's my problem? Or, I can't, whatever, I'm not connected to the network, what's my problem? And then from there, that gives you a general IT understanding and you can get trained in that. And then from there, you can move on to maybe desk side support where you're helping someone face to face, and then maybe move into more of a systems administration. I think help desk is really a good way to enter the IT field. And you don't have to have a degree.
Yeah, I'm going to say some general stuff, and I'm very curious to see if you guys have any reaction to what I'm going to say, because I'm talking from the ivory tower, and these guys are so the first thing I wanted to say is I was kind of looking around the room a little bit here, and I think I can safely say this. It looks like most of the people in this room are probably my vintage. Okay? I don't think we can compete heads on with the kids that are coming out of college today, okay? I would be very hesitant, for example, to compete for a developer job with my son. He would kick my butt, okay? He would get the job, okay? They've got skills, they're quick, they're agile, they pick the stuff up really fast. Now, that doesn't mean I may be hopeless, but it doesn't mean that we're hopeless. I mean, I think the important thing to keep in mind is that you bring a different perspective, you bring a different skill set to the table. We do have all the young kids who they're doing the quick development, they know the technology like the back of their hand, but they don't have the life experience that we have, right? And I think that's something that you can leverage with an employer. So I don't think you're hopeless. I definitely don't think you're hopeless, but I also don't think it's realistic to think that you can compete with some of the kids that are coming out of the school. So that was the first thing I wanted to say. The second thing that I wanted to say is that the face of online education seems to be changing. Okay, it seems to be evolving and going through a metamorphosis, and I think it's a good one. In the past, and I don't want to name any companies, but in the past there were specific institutions and companies and so forth that basically their business plan was to provide these online experiences and these online degrees. And there's a variety of them that are out there, the names and the rest of it. But what's starting to happen now is you're starting to see more and more schools just putting their courses out online, okay? And, I'm not talking about fly-by-night schools. I'm talking about schools like MIT. If I remember right, I just heard an MIT professor talk about it. The professors now are required to put, one of their courses actually online. And Stanford's doing that, and more schools are starting to do that. And I think you're going to see RIT start to do something in that particular area as well. Now, the big difference with this, and that's kind of where I was curious how you guys are going to react to this, is in the old model, if you did one of these online programs, you got a credential. Okay, so you could show up with an employer, whether or not the credential was worth the paper it was written on or not, I don't really know. But you could at least show up with a credential and say, here's some sort of a record or proof that I actually went through and I did this particular work. The courses that institutions are starting to put online now, you don't really get credit for. The credit or the value that you get out of them is learning that you get by going through that particular course. So you don't really have a particular credential, and what I don't know is how important those credentials are to employers. That's kind of why I wanted to hear what your reaction is. So, I think there's a lot of opportunities out there to learn a lot of stuff on your own on the web, but the problem is You're not going to have a certificate, a piece of paper, something from a school that says, I actually have this credential. You're going to have to prove to the employer that you have it instead. So those were at least the things I wanted to say. I felt like I wandered a little bit. But anyway, so I'm just kind of curious if you guys have any kind of a reaction to that.
A couple things there. From the sort of the age perspective, I don't think it factors in. To be honest, it depends on the position, I think, and what you're looking for. I have 6 people on my staff here work for me. I'm the youngest one, so I've got gentlemen on the service desk who are 40, 50 years old. It doesn't really matter. I actually would prefer to hire someone. Let's say I'm going to hire a help desk technician. Someone coming right on our IT with a degree in MIS, great. Someone who's got 20 years experience, maybe in a different field. They've got some technical experience, maybe a couple certifications. They went to some classes locally. I may be more inclined to hire that person, not the RIT kid, because he's going to come, he's going to work for me for a year, and he's going to go. Now, if I'm a large organization, he may get promoted up. That's a nice way to get into it, get your foot in the door in the company, and move up the ranks. A lot of smaller companies, there's not a lot of movement there. So, when I was at the Bonadil Group, it's like a 400-person CPA firm here in town. There was 8 of us in IT. I had some people. I actually hired a kid out of our IT. He worked for me for 2 years. Moved to Philadelphia. There was no place for him to really move up in a small IT organization. So would I hire someone who's a little bit older, a little more rooted, maybe will stick around for a number of years, and be probably a better employee, someone a little bit older with that customer service life experience than a kid sort of coming out of IT who maybe doesn't have those people skills. So with respect to the degrees, I think it depends on the type of position. If I saw, and I'll be specific, University of Phoenix, you see a lot? Right? If I see that, someone who's got a degree in MIS from RIT, sure, RIT is going to look more favorable. If someone's got no degree, there's someone with a degree from University of Phoenix, that looks a little bit better. I think, from my perspective, I want to see someone who's doing continuous education. What that continuous education is, maybe doesn't matter as much. It's just as long as they're doing something. If they've got newer certifications, they're taking classes, they're continuing their education, that's important. What it is might not matter so much. I mean, if they've taken classes in something that's not specific to what they're even going to use for this job, then where they took the class doesn't really matter. But it's that type of person. When I look at the resume and I see this person's, they're not just limping along looking for it. I mean, they're aggressive, they're working, they're ambitious, and hopefully if I hire them and they come to the organization, they'll continue that. They're going to see stuff, and they'll ask questions and they'll have ideas. That's very attractive to me. It's just someone who is constantly wants to learn and wants to improve things.
Well, I certainly agree with the age. I would rather hire somebody who's got some experience and has some stability in their life than maybe a fast burner out of college. On the other hand, hopefully we can, even in a small organization, we can make some room to move people up if they do seem like they're getting tired. In answer to Paul, I guess I'm a little concerned that if there aren't those credentials out there and if they're just auditing classes, what's to stop somebody from not telling the truth on their resume and things along those lines? So I guess I would have some concern if there weren't credentials to follow up. Yes, I'd probably ask some more in-depth questions to make sure that they had gained some knowledge there. And from what was said earlier, when we hire somebody, we do ask them some difficult kind of tactical questions to make sure they do have that problem-solving ability and things like that.
that could be one of your stopping blocks right there, is that if you're not willing to do help desk and get your foot in the door somewhere, then maybe that would be a way for you to get in. Does age have anything to do with those types of jobs? Definitely not. We have hired several people that are 40, 50 years old for opportunities like that. So that definitely has nothing to do with it. It could have something to do with if you're doing phone screens. Phone screens can be difficult because you don't have the opportunity to make that connection with the person face to face. So the first thing you told us before you opened your question was, I'm kind of shy. Well, that could be coming out in your interviews. So I don't know if you're getting any sort of coaching at all. I'd be happy to chat with you, but that could be sort of the thing that's hindering you is purely just the interview or maybe your confidence.
And I would agree with that as well. I think you've got to be able to sell yourself to show that you can work with people and do the support. And I guess I don't quite understand what your dislike for help desk is, because I see that a lot of what desktop support is if we can't answer the question on the phone, yes, we'll come fix it. But
what I mean is like just sitting in the cubicle on the phone all day.
Okay. And
I don't like talking on the phone.
I guess I can appreciate that. But maybe open those doors. I don't know.
I'd say managed. I have service desk technicians work for me, and fortunately, I think those positions are just few and far between these days. Especially with the way the economy is. It's there are postings, but for internally, we continue to, as our company grows, our service desk tends not to. So you do less with more. There's a lot more outsourcing in a lot of those. So, internal companies. My service desk, there's 4 on the service desk. 2 are contract, 2 are full-time employees. There's not a lot of desire to add full-time service desk or help desk desktop support roles. We tend to do contract that more. A lot of companies that tends to be one of the roles that they're outsourcing quite a bit to maybe someone like Mike Williams. So one of the local IT companies where it's more cost effective to pay an outside service provider for those types of services as opposed to having on-staff desktop support folks.
To be quite honest, I go straight to the resume. If I like what I see, then I might go back to the cover letter to see, what is your voice? Maybe how do you word things? Is it professional? Maybe you tell me your story about why you came to Rochester, something interesting in there, but I go straight for the resume.
Because I think you made the statement of, on the resume, show how I would fit. I've been using a cover letter for that, so I should move that into the resume.
Yeah, customize the resume.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'll say, while I don't tend to look at resumes very often, but when I am interviewing somebody, if they've submitted a cover letter, I'm going to at least skim it and read it and see what it has to say. If somebody took the time to write it, I'll see what it has to say. I don't want to see a 3-page cover letter.
Yeah, cover letters. For my internal HR, department will screen those. I typically don't see the cover letter. I usually don't require them. But I will say, just in general, as someone who I just found a job last year, I was laid off. Finding a connection, a personal referral, I think goes a long way. I use LinkedIn. If you don't use LinkedIn, maybe just because I'm a little bit younger, if I get a resume, the first thing I do is I look them up on LinkedIn. I see if I can find them on Facebook, I can see they're on Twitter, those types of things. If you're up-to-date, sort of current technology professional, you're up to speed on all those social media type of things. Now it's not a red flag if you're not, but if you looked at my LinkedIn profile, it almost mirrors my resume. It just doesn't list my position. I'm not trying to brag. My resume is. I've gotten a lot of compliments on it. It's very different. It just doesn't list a bunch of skills, and it's a lot about the experience you have. And when I apply for jobs in the past, my resume is different for every single position. I move my bullets around. I try to find what I take specific things out of that job posting, and I'll tweak my resume. You know what I mean? I had applied for tons and tons of jobs, and I had so many versions of my resume for each job posting. Customized it for every single one. Never did cover letters, but every position I tweak. So if I've got 10 bullets on my my most recent position, I move them around or I take some out depending on the position I was applying for. But I think you have to be. My only other advice would be, as we're wrapping up here, is if you can use LinkedIn, a lot of times what I will do, what I did, is I see a job posting, I go right to LinkedIn and I try to find out who is really hiring for this. I try to get around recruiters. I try to get around HR folks. And I try to go right to the person who's actually hiring. You know what I mean? If you can get to that person somehow, with just a referral from someone you know, or reach out on LinkedIn. When I was hunting for a job, I would see a posting, maybe for a smaller company. You could find pretty easily who the director of IT was or the manager, and boom, just try to connect with them on LinkedIn. Most people just will get that acceptance, and then you start your pitch. You can use recruiters and a lot more, but try to get that personal connection.
Use your referral. Somebody else who's got a connection with that IT person, and get an introduction through them. I agree with LinkedIn's a pretty neat tool for professional stuff.
I'm much more apt to hire someone who was a referral than just going through. I went through the normal channels where something's posted online, you submit it, you never hear back from anything. Recruiters go a long way. They've got a direct connection to the HR and the hiring manager, so if you can circumvent all that. Quite honestly, because a lot of companies don't want to pay headhunting fees, honestly, so if they can find a candidate on their own without going through a headhunter, that's more preferable because they're not going to pay for the fees and those types of things. Those are just some tips.
And I'll just give you a couple of tips from my perspective. And again, I'm not it's a very different, I'm looking at this as, when I have a position and I'm looking to hire. Everything you said, absolutely. The two things that I just wanted to add is just remember, whoever's screening those resumes has probably got a pile this high. Okay? And you want to do something in that resume that makes you stand out. You want to do something that, when I pick up that resume and I do my initial scan, there's something that just grabs my attention and I say to myself, I want to read this. Okay, and that's hard to do. And we used to play tricks, when I was in college, and you'd print it on different colored paper and things like that. That's not the kind of thing that I'm talking about. It's content, and it definitely has to be personal, customized is the word I want, customized for the job you're applying for. And the other thing that I wanted to say about tools like LinkedIn and those other social things, if you do make it to the interview stage, make sure you use those tools to learn something about the people that you're probably going to be meeting with at that company. Don't go to that company cold. Know something about that company, know something about the people that are there, so that when you're there, they know that you did your research and you did a little bit of work, and that's going to make you look a little bit better than some of the other people that are applying.